Between February and November 2024, the world's richest people quietly did something huge. They started selling, not a little, not slowly. They dumped more than $50 billion of stock in big, concentrated moves that lit up every warning system on Wall Street. Jeff Bezos sold around $13 billion of Amazon. Mark Zuckerberg unloaded over $9 billion in Meta. Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, sold shares for the first time in his 18 years as CEO. Larry Ellison sold $3 billion in Oracle. The Walton family, heirs to Walmart, sold $2.3 billion in Walmart stock. And inside NVIDIA, the crown jewel of the AI boom, executives sold more than $1.2 billion while telling the public that the best is yet to come. We're told this is normal. Estate planning, tax optimization, diversification. No, this is an exit. The smart money is heading for the door. Calmly, early, together. And they're using the exact same playbook they used in 2007, right before the financial crisis wiped out trillions in wealth and sent markets down more than 50%. Here's what most people miss. These aren't random investors panicking on social media. These are the people who built trillion-dollar companies. Jeff Bezos turned Amazon from a garage project into a global empire over 30 years. He has lived through the dot-com crash, the 2008 meltdown, COVID, and every shock in between. And he has never sold at this scale, this fast. Jamie Dimon has run America's largest bank since 2005. He survived 2008 from the inside. He has seen every kind of crisis you can imagine. For 19 years, he never sold a single share of his own company's stock. These men don't panic. They don't sell because of headlines. They act on data, on private information, on real-time numbers you and I will only see months later, if ever. And right now, that data is telling them one thing: get out. Before we go deeper into who's selling and when, you need to understand what insider selling actually means. Insiders are the people at the core of a company. CEOs, top executives, board members, major shareholders. They see everything. Jeff Bezos doesn't just read Amazon's quarterly report like you do. He sees daily sales figures, internal forecasts, margins, weak spots. He knows when growth is quietly slowing before it ever shows up in a press release. Jamie Dimon doesn't just watch CNBC. He sees real-time loan defaults, credit card delinquencies, commercial real estate problems, small business failures across the entire JP Morgan system. When these people buy or sell their own stock, they must report it to the SEC within 2 business days. Those reports are public. Anyone can read them. Almost nobody does. So why do they matter? Because insiders, by definition, know more than you. When they truly believe the future is bright, they tend to hold. When they see trouble coming long before the public does, they quietly start to sell. There's a way to measure this. Since the 1970s, research firms have tracked how many dollars insiders are selling versus buying. They call this the sell-to-buy ratio. In a normal year, insiders might sell $2 or $3 of stock for every $1 they buy. That makes sense. Executives get paid in stock. They sell some to pay taxes or diversify. That's routine. But when that ratio jumps far above normal, when they're selling $8, $9, $10 for every dollar they buy, history is very clear. That's not routine. That's fear. In 2024, that ratio hit around 9-to-1 for the year. In some months, it spiked even higher. Insiders are selling about $9 of their own stock for every $1 they're buying. We haven't seen anything like that since 2007, and we already know what followed 2007. Now let's talk about who is selling and how much. First, Jeff Bezos. In early 2024, Bezos filed to sell tens of millions of Amazon shares. Across 2 big selling waves, he turned more than $13 billion of Amazon stock into cash. Yes, he has sold stock before, but this time is different. This time he sold faster, in bigger chunks, near all-time highs. With Amazon valued around $2 trillion, The public story is tax reasons and moving to Florida. But Bezos has been a billionaire since the late 1990s. He could have moved to a low-tax state at any point in the last 20-plus years. Why now? Because he knows timing. Then there's Mark Zuckerberg. Throughout 2024, he sold Meta stock almost every month, hundreds of millions of dollars at a time. By late in the year, he had sold over $9 billion worth. Meta's stock had exploded from around $90 at the lows in 2022 to over $500 in 2024. The company's value more than tripled on AI hype and aggressive cost-cutting. At that peak, while the public was celebrating, Zuckerberg quietly turned huge chunks of his stake into cash. The official line, he's funding philanthropy, but he didn't have to sell to do that. He could have borrowed against his shares at low interest rates like many billionaires do, and kept his upside. Instead, he chose to lock in profits at record prices. That's not just generosity, that's risk management. Now consider Jamie Dimon. For nearly 2 decades, he was famous for never selling his JP Morgan stock. He used that as a signal. I'm aligned with shareholders. I believe in this bank. I'm in it for the long haul. He lived through the 2008 crisis with his money on the line and kept holding. In 2024, that changed. He announced plans to sell around 1 million shares, worth roughly $160 million. The public explanation? Estate planning, diversification. He's getting older. But nothing stopped him from diversifying earlier. Not in 2010, not in 2015, not in 2020. Why now? And remember, Dimon probably has the best view of the real economy of anyone on Earth. He sees which businesses are defaulting, how stressed consumers really are, what's happening in commercial real estate loans, what his corporate clients are struggling with. For him to start selling now, after 18 years of never selling, should make you sit up straight. Larry Ellison tells a similar story. He co-founded Oracle in the 1970s. He's been attached to that company for nearly 50 years. In 2024, as Oracle's stock surged on AI demand and cloud growth, Ellison sold around $3 billion of stock near the highs. At this point, he's worth well over $100 billion. He doesn't need quick cash. If he's selling billions at those prices, it means one thing. He believes the stock is expensive relative to the future he actually expects. Then we have the Walton family, the heirs to Walmart. They've held Walmart stock for over 6 decades. It is their legacy, their identity, and their cash machine. In 2024, several family members, Jim, Alice, Rob, sold stock totaling more than $2.3 billion. They rarely sell big chunks. But this time, they all sold within months of each other, with Walmart near all-time highs. That's not random. That's coordinated de-risking. And finally, NVIDIA. NVIDIA is the poster child of the AI boom. The stock went vertical. It became one of the most valuable companies on Earth. Inside the company, executives sold more than $1 billion of stock into that hype, while publicly talking about endless AI demand and a golden future. They told the world, this is just the beginning. But their actions said, this is a good time to cash out. Put all of this together, and you get one number: $464 billion in insider selling across 2024. That's the second largest wave of insider selling ever recorded. The only bigger one, 2007, right before the last major financial meltdown. Now let's look at the historical patterns, because this isn't about one year. It's about what usually comes next. Pattern number 1. When insider selling spikes like this, the crash usually follows 6 to 18 months later. In 1987, insiders sold heavily in the first half of the year. The market crashed in October. In 2000, they sold aggressively in late 1999 and early 2000. The dot-com bubble burst soon after. In 2007, insider selling hit record levels. The market peaked in October. By the time the dust settled in 2009, the S&P 500 had been cut almost in half. The same story repeats. Insiders see problems early. They sell near the top. The public keeps buying. Then the floor gives way. We are now in that heavy selling phase again. Pattern number 2. When the sell-to-buy ratio jumps above about 8 to 1, it has historically had a perfect track record as a warning sign. Every time insiders have sold more than $8 of stock for every $1 they've bought, the market has either crashed or entered a serious bear market within about 2 years. In 2024, that ratio was around 9 to 1 for the year, and even higher in some quarters. We are already in the danger zone that has never been benign in the past. Pattern number 3. The insiders in the most overvalued sectors always sell first. In 2000, it was tech. In 2007, it was financials, banks, and mortgage firms. In 2024, who is selling? Big tech and big finance, the AI darlings, the mega-cap growth names, and the largest banks. The message is blunt. Tech valuations are stretched. Financials are sitting on landmines, especially in commercial real estate and corporate credit. Pattern number 4. When the longest-term believers become sellers, the top is close. Bezos held for 30 years. Zuckerberg has held since 2004. Dimon held for almost 2 decades. Ellison held for nearly half a century. These are not people who flinch at volatility. They've lived through multiple crashes and kept holding. For them to all sell billions at the same time is not random noise. It's a collective judgment that current prices are about as good as they're going to get for a while. Pattern number 5. When insider selling blows past $400 billion in a year, the market does not rocket to new highs and keep going. It either crashes or grinds through years of dead money and slow recovery. In the past, after the late 90s selling, new highs took about 7 years. After 2007, they took around 6 years. Even after the 1987 crash, it took years for a clean, sustained move higher. With more than $460 billion sold in 2024, history suggests that whatever peak we're at now will not be easily or quickly surpassed. So what are these billionaires actually seeing? Let's simplify it. First, they see a stock market that's far more expensive than the underlying economy. One way to measure that is the so-called Buffett indicator, total stock market value divided by the country's GDP. Historically, something like 80 to 100% is normal. Around 150% is bubble territory. Right now, that number is around 180+%. In plain English, stocks are priced at almost double what the economy produces in a year. For that to be sustainable, either the economy has to suddenly explode higher or profit margins have to stay at record levels forever. Neither is likely. Second, they see speculative leverage everywhere. Margin debt, the money people borrow to buy stocks, is near record highs. That means when markets finally turn down, selling won't be voluntary. Brokers will force people to sell to cover loans. That forced selling pushes prices lower. Lower prices create more margin calls, and the cycle feeds on itself. The billionaires don't want to be trapped inside that spiral. They'd rather be holding cash while everyone else is getting liquidated. Third, they see commercial real estate cracking. Office buildings in major cities are half empty. Spaces bought or financed in 2019 or 2020 at peak prices are now worth far less. Cheap mortgages are rolling over into expensive ones. Owners can't refinance on the same terms. Banks are exposed. Losses are building. CEOs at big banks see this clearly in their internal reports. Fourth, they see a looming corporate debt problem. Companies loaded up on cheap debt when interest rates were near zero. Now, as those bonds mature between 2024 and 2026, they have to refinance at much higher rates. Some can handle it, many can't. We're already seeing a rising wave of bankruptcies, and we're still early in that refinancing cycle. Fifth, they see government debt spiraling. The federal government owes tens of trillions of dollars and is paying more and more just in interest every year. Eventually, something has to give. Massive spending cuts, big tax hikes, or money printing that weakens the currency. Any one of those, or any mix of them, is a drag on long-term stock returns. And finally, they see their own internal company data slipping. You and I see the polished quarterly numbers. They see the raw feed. They see sales growth quietly slowing, margins tightening, costs rising, customer behavior changing. They don't wait for that story to show up on CNBC. They act before it becomes obvious. That's why they're selling now. So when does it break? Historically, the gap between peak insider selling and major market trouble has been around 6 to 18 months. In 2024, insiders sold aggressively all year, especially in the middle. That puts the danger window roughly in 2025 and 2026. The exact trigger is unknowable. It could be a big bank failure, a wave of corporate defaults, a commercial real estate shock, a geopolitical crisis that tips the system over. The point is not to know the exact spark. The point is to recognize how fragile the system already is. High valuations, high leverage, rising defaults, political and fiscal stress. You don't need to predict the match when the whole room is soaked in gasoline. So, who wins when this breaks and who gets crushed? The winners are straightforward. The billionaires who already sold. Bezos, Zuckerberg, Dimon, Ellison, the Waltons, and many others. If their stocks fall 40 or 50%, they can buy back in at half price. They turn paper gains into cash at the top and can use that cash to scoop up assets at the bottom. People holding cash and gold also win. Cash gives you options when everyone else is forced to sell. Gold tends to hold its value when central banks panic and print money to save the system. Cash gives you options when everyone else is forced to sell. Gold tends to hold its value when central banks panic and print money to save the system. A small number of professional investors who bet against bubbles or who specialize in buying distressed assets will also make fortunes. The losers, the middle class. Most middle class wealth lives in three places: retirement accounts, home equity, and a small amount of savings. If markets fall 40 or 50% just as you're about to retire, your lifestyle can be permanently damaged. Imagine being 65 with your life savings in a 401k and watching it get cut in half right when you plan to stop working. You don't have another 30 years to rebuild. You did everything right and still get crushed because of timing. Pension funds and big institutions also take huge hits. When their portfolios fall and their promises stay the same, something has to give. Benefits, services, or both. Anyone who is heavily leveraged, who borrowed money to buy stocks or speculate, is at risk of being completely wiped out. The system doesn't care if you're bullish long term. When margin calls hit, your positions are sold, whether you agree or not. That's the wealth transfer from people who held too much risk at the top to people who stepped aside and waited with cash at the bottom. So what can an ordinary person actually do? You can't stop the crash, but you can decide where you're standing when it hits. You can dial back your stock exposure to a level you can emotionally handle in a 50% downturn. Build a cash buffer so you're not forced to sell at the worst moment. Hold some gold as insurance against monetary chaos. Make a buy list of strong companies you'd love to own at half today's price. Protect your income, build an emergency fund, and prepare your mindset, because the hardest part of every crash isn't the math, it's the psychology. When your account is down 40 or 50%, when the news is screaming end of the world, When friends and co-workers are panicking, that's when the greatest opportunities appear. And that's when almost everyone sells. If you prepare now, you don't have to be one of them. Here's the simple truth. The billionaire exodus is real. More than $50 billion sold by the most successful insiders on the planet. Hundreds of billions in total insider selling. Sell-to-buy ratios we only see before serious crashes. They see the same charts you do, but they also see the stuff you don't. Internal numbers, credit stress, real-time cracks in the system. They aren't going on TV to warn you. They're voting with their feet and their sell orders. You don't have to know the exact day or the exact trigger. You just have to decide, do you want to stand on the same side of the trade as the insiders or be the one holding their shares when the music stops?